All right, let's talk about making our qualitative research solid. I mean, really, truly trustworthy. Today, we're skipping the abstract stuff and jumping straight into the practical steps you can take. We're going to build a guide step by step from that very first idea all the way to your final report. So, you ready to build a rock solid research project? Let's do this.
This is the question, isn't it? It's the one every single qualitative researcher gets asked, or at least worries about. Since we're so involved in the data, how do we prove that what we found is real? That it's grounded in our participants' lives and not just what we wanted to find? That's exactly what we're going to break down. So first things first, we have to get this straight. Qualitative research is not playing the same game as quantitative research. It's a different sport with a different rule book. Thinkers like Lincoln and Guba knew this, so they developed a whole parallel framework. We're not chasing objectivity in the same way. Instead, we're aiming for things like credibility, dependability, and confirmability.
And these are the four pillars that hold the whole thing up. You've got credibility. Basically, are your findings believable? Transferability. Could these ideas have meaning somewhere else? Then there's dependability. Was your process clear and consistent? And finally, confirmability. Can you show that your findings came from the data, not just your own head? These four pillars are going to be our guide through everything. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the blueprint, the design phase. Then we'll get our boots on the ground, out in the field collecting data. After that, we'll talk about how to tell a powerful story with what you found. And to wrap it all up, we'll go through a super handy checklist. Sound good? Let's start right at the beginning. Stage 1, the blueprint. And I can't stress this enough. This part is so critical. Building trust in your research doesn't happen when you're analyzing data. It starts way before that, before you've even met a single participant. It's all in the planning. And what's the very first thing you need to plan? It's all about looking in the mirror. Before we can even try to understand other people, we have to understand ourselves, our own baggage, our assumptions, our biases. This is a practice we call reflexivity. So a reflexivity plan is you being proactive. It means you actually sit down and write it out. Ask yourself, who am I? What's my relationship to this topic? What do I already believe to be true? And then how am I going to track this? Am I going to keep a journal? This hits confirmability right out of the gate. Okay, so you've looked inward. The next logical step is to look outward and ask, who are you going to talk to? Your sampling strategy is another huge piece of the puzzle. And in qualitative research, we're definitely not looking for a random sample. We use what's called purposive sampling. This is where you deliberately pick people who have the richest stories to tell, the ones who can give you deep insights. You're not trying to generalize to everyone on the planet. You're trying to build a deep, rich understanding that lets other people see how your findings might be transferable to their own world. And to really finish off that blueprint, here are a couple more things to think about. Are you going to use triangulation, like maybe do interviews and look at documents? How are you going to create an audit trail to keep track of all your decisions? And can you plan ahead for member checking, where you actually go back to your participants? Thinking about this stuff now will save you so much hassle later. Okay, blueprint is done. Now we head into stage 2. We're in the field. This is where the action is. We're gathering data, we're talking to people, and we're starting to figure out what it all means. This is where all that planning really starts to pay off. One of the most powerful tools in your toolkit out in the field is triangulation. Just think of it like a detective. You wouldn't trust a case based on one single clue, right? You look for multiple pieces of evidence that all point in the same direction. That's triangulation. And here's the cool part. There are different ways to do it. You can triangulate data sources, compare what people say in interviews with, say, what's written in company reports. You can use different methods, like observing a meeting and then running a focus group about it. You can even have multiple researchers look at the data or analyze it through different theoretical lenses to see if the findings hold up. All right, next up is a strategy that goes right to the heart of credibility. It's called member checking. And all it really is going back to your participants and asking, hey, did I get this right? Does this sound like your experience? The process is pretty straightforward. You summarize what you think you found, you share your interpretation, and then you just ask them, does this ring true for you? The key, though, is that you have to actually listen and use their feedback, whether they agree or they correct you, to make your analysis even stronger. It's a fantastic reality check. Okay, so as you're analyzing, you start to see patterns, right? It's exciting, and it's so tempting to just focus on all the data that fits your emerging theory.
But a truly rigorous researcher does the exact opposite. They actively go looking for the stuff that doesn't fit. We call this negative case analysis. You're basically playing devil's advocate with your own data. You hunt for the outliers, the exceptions to the rule. Why? Because when you can explain why those cases are different, you're proving your findings are robust and not just a result of confirmation bias. It makes your final argument so much more convincing. So you've done all this hard, careful work collecting and analyzing your data. But how do you show that to your readers? That brings us to stage 3, telling the story. This is not just writing things down, it's about making all of your hard work visible. And your absolute best friend in this stage is something called thick description. It sounds kind of academic, but really it's just about painting a picture so vivid, so detailed that your reader feels like they were right there with you. So instead of writing, "the meeting was tense," thick description would be something like, "No one made eye contact, John tapped his pen relentlessly on the table, and Maria's jaw was visibly clenched." See the difference? You're giving your reader the raw data they need to decide for themselves if your conclusions make sense, and if it might apply to their own world. Finally, in your report, you got to show your work. Pull back the curtain, explain your audit trail, talk about the decisions you made and why you made them. Be upfront with your reflexivity statement that you started way back in the blueprint phase, and be honest about your study's limitations. That kind of transparency is the absolute foundation of dependability and confirmability. Whew, we have covered a ton of ground, haven't we? From that very first plan to the final report. So let's bring it all home with one final checklist that ties every single strategy back to those 4 pillars of trustworthiness. And here it is all in one place. You can see how it all connects. For credibility, making sure it's believable, we use things like triangulation and member checking. For transferability, seeing if it applies elsewhere, we use thick description. For dependability, showing our process was sound, we have our audit trail. And for confirmability, proving it's from the data, not us, we have our reflexivity and negative case analysis. Every single step has a purpose.
So as we close out, I've got one final question, and this one's for you. Looking at all of these practical, doable strategies, what is the one thing you're going to intentionally build into your next project to make it even more trustworthy? Thanks so much for joining me today. Now go make your next project the most solid one yet.